Get free tech advice for your business from O2 Gurus. Search O2 Business for more.
Hey guys, it's Basil here with BTech. Now, Huawei kicked up a bit of a fuss at MWC this year with their watch and wearables, but that doesn't mean that they've forgotten about phones. The Ascend G7, announced at IFA last year, has just hit the UK, and what's more, it costs £149. Now, this thing punches way above its weight in terms of spec and design. It's got a 720p 5.5-inch display. It's also got a Qualcomm Snapdragon 410 processor, 2 gig of RAM, packs LTE on board, and has an all-metal body. Before we get into the phone, let's take a look inside the box. But before we do that, why don't you subscribe to BTech if you like this video? It really helps us out if you guys subscribe, because it means we get cool tech in earlier. Right, let's get back to that box. Inside you've got the phone, you've got a SIM eject pin, a bunch of literature, quick start guides, etc., a hard shell for the G7, you've got headphones, a micro USB cable, and a power connector. Nice to see there's a case to protect that scratchable metal back in there. Right, that's the box taken care of. Now let's get back to the phone, and this is a big one. It isn't much smaller in terms of its footprint than the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, which to all intents and purposes makes this thing a phablet. It is, however, thinner at a respectable 7.6mm. It's got nice flat sides, which also makes it very easy to hold. The front is where you'll find the display and the 5-megapixel front camera. The right-hand side has a SIM, micro SD card slots, as well as the volume rocker and power button. And to the base is the micro USB port with no buttons or ports on the left hand side. There's a 3.5mm jack up at the top. Around the back, it's a 13-megapixel rear camera. You've got a flash and a loudspeaker too. The phone itself feels like a mini Ascend Mate 7. Metal, really solid and well put together. The G7 weighs 176 grams, so that's a little bit heavier than the two real main phablets out there, the Note 4 and the iPhone 6 Plus. Heavy it may be, but it also feels incredibly premium for the price. Definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, this is the most premium device you can get for £149. It's bold, there are no removable components, so it's cohesive, and ultimately it just feels like a good phone, which is what Huawei is probably going for, and they've definitely achieved that. The wow factor in terms of value doesn't stop there though. The 5.5-inch 720p display carries it on with force. It's an LTPS LCD panel. At 5.5 inches, that makes it the same size screen as the iPhone 6 Plus or the LG G3. It's way behind both, however, in terms of resolution at 720p and with a pixel density of 267 pixels per inch. That said, the quality is most certainly there. You'll only really be able to make a pixel out if you get about 15 centimeters or so from the screen, or less than that, so for most people this won't feel like a lower resolution device, or at least a much lower resolution device. What's more, viewing angles and brightness are phenomenal, as good as some flagships out there. Being an LTPS panel, the G7 is nice and vibrant for an LCD display. It has to be said though, Huawei has calibrated it a little bit warmer than the main competitors out there, like the iPhone, and a fair bit warmer than the Samsung Galaxy Note 4 and its AMOLED screen. All things considered though, a mightily impressive panel. Now let's take a look inside it. Android 4.4.4 with Emotion UI 3.0 on board. Emotion UI ditches the Android apps tray for an altogether more iPhone-esque user experience. Apps, shortcuts, widgets, they all populate the home screens. There's also a pull-down bar from the top, as is true of Android, which gives you notifications, and you've got quick toggles as well. Pull down from one of your home screens and you get a universal search, which is almost identical in terms of interaction and function with Apple's Spotlight search. In addition to borrowing heavily from iPhones, Huawei imbues Emotion UI with a lot more personalization than stock Android or iOS. You can customize your experience by swapping out themes, transitions, and even the grid size of your home screen. And if you don't mind a little bit of side loading, visit emui.com and you can download a crazy number of themes for your Huawei Ascend G7. So you have to admit, Emotion UI has gotten better with every iteration, and 3.0 is the best one to date. But it still isn't as polished as HTC Sense, Samsung's TouchWiz, or Sony's Xperia user interface. Notification bar widgets such as Spotify, for example, appear transparent, like almost impossible to interact with, and certain themes will prevent you from being able to unlock your phone in a normal way, which is just a bit crazy, and you wouldn't expect to see that from a global manufacturer's skin. You can install custom launchers though, and that's always a plus of Android. A custom launcher, for anyone who doesn't know, is a new skin you can download through the Google Play Store that makes your phone look and feel completely different. This leaves the overall experience imperfect, customizable to the nines in every way, and again, for the money, very, very impressive, especially given the fact that all the interaction with that user interface appears very smooth. The 13 megapixel camera around the back packs an f2 aperture and a 35mm equivalent focal range. Pictures are impressive, especially in good lighting. It won't fend off as much grain or pull in as much detail as flagships like the iPhone 6 or the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, but in its price range, there's nothing that can even come close to this. In fact, in good light, it's actually brilliant. Check out this picture of a cat. There's even a decent flash on board to pick up where the middling low light performance leaves everything feeling a little bit lackluster. It's cooler than we would have liked it to have been, but it does a good job of brightening everything up sufficiently. The front-facing 5 megapixel camera has an f2.4 lens. While both support Huawei's trademark beauty mode, the front camera with its high resolution and decent performance makes it the obvious choice for selfies. Suffice to say, in true Huawei fashion, beauty mode is quite something, making you look instantly like a blow-up doll. The Ascend G7 shoots 1080p video and again does a decent job of it, especially in good lighting. Exposure compensation does feel a little bit too staggered, and the digital zoom kills quite a bit of detail, but focus is on point throughout macro to telephoto, and general clarity is decent too. The Ascend G7 isn't just a good camera phone though. Thanks to the large, brilliant screen, it's also a great video player, and of course with Android on board you've got loads of streaming apps as well as codecs and downloadable video players at your fingertips. The loudspeaker around the back is fair. If you try, you can cover it up pretty easily, but we found that our hands don't naturally cover it up, which is always a good thing. What's more, it's sufficiently loud to hear when it's ringing in your bag, and you can hear it quite comfortably when you're playing a YouTube clip, for example. Speaking of gaming, I'm always impressed at just how well they run on a Qualcomm Snapdragon 410 processor. I loaded up Dragon Quest 8 as well as Modern Combat 5 and Asphalt 8, all pretty frame-bustingly intensive games. The metal frame did warm up a fair bit, but performance was there throughout for bouts of gaming in excess of half an hour. Deep diving into that processor, and it's the Snapdragon 410, like I said, clocked at 1.2 GHz with 2 GB of RAM on board. Interestingly, this is the exact same spec as found on the Samsung Galaxy A5, just at half the price. Another great addition to the Ascend G7 is the 16 GB of memory on board, and of course micro SD expandability. It also has 4G, which is fantastic, as well as your standard connections, which include Wi-Fi, GPS, 3G as well, and obviously Bluetooth 4.0 for all your wearables. The icing on the cake really does come in the form of the 3000 mAh battery. Huawei claims over 600 plus hours of standby time with this, and while we didn't put that theory to the test, we did use it for a full day and still had some battery left by 6 PM, which for us is impressive. It probably won't get you through more than a day if you're an intensive user, and it definitely won't get you through 2, but if you're a light user, you may well jump well into that second day before your 15% warning flashes. So all things considered, there is no single area the Huawei Ascend G7 feels like a £149 phone. Premium design, a great screen, brilliant performance for the price, a zippy user interface, 4G on board, a nice big battery and plenty of storage. Huawei shoots and Huawei scores with the Ascend G7. While we can't think of many reasons not to go for it if you're looking for a phone in the price, if it is too big, you can always check out the Huawei Honor Holly at 5 inches or the Motorola Moto G 2013 or 2014. The aforementioned Samsung Galaxy A5 is richer in the hand, given that it just feels a little bit less cumbersome, but like I said earlier, it is double the price. Hopefully Hopefully you've enjoyed my review of the Huawei Ascend G7. If you did, then click that like button. Also, if you like BTech, then subscribe to the channel. Not only will you stay on top of everything we do that way, but you'll also help us out massively. The more subs we get, the faster we tend to get tech in, and the sooner we can review it for you. Also, if you've got any questions about the G7, just fire them in the comments section below and I will endeavor to answer. Thanks for watching BTech.